Слушате Еврозум. Во ова издание на Еврозум гостин е известувачот во Европскиот парламент за Македонија, господинот Ричард Ховит. Mr. Howit, welcome to my program once again. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Well, what to say after the fifth recommendation of the Commission? What's next?
Well, what to say is that it should be agreed. It should be followed up.
That's what.
That's why if you make a recommendation
we had the
to
same
a body,
hope. We had the same hope last year in very same time.
Yeah. Well, just to finish that point, the European Council will meet in December. The European Parliament, and I'm responsible, will vote. I will steer through a vote to accept the recommendation. Let's be clear about that. And I will be lobbying and influencing and negotiating hard with the European Council that they really listen to and give serious consideration. Now, hope. Good word, important word. I used it yesterday in my response in the European Parliament to the progress report. We have to revive hope. We have had a lost year. Essentially the country is back where it was last December, but we did have hope then that we could get agreement in the European Council, and what we have to do is to use this report, use this recommendation and use the next few weeks to revive those hopes.
How to have this how to make Council to accept this recommendation? I mean, let's be realistic. I spoke with the Greeks here in the Parliament. There is no way for them to accept and to allow Macedonia to start the negotiation. So is there any, way that somebody could pursue Greece to allow Macedonia to start negotiations?
Well, first, it's very easy to name one country or another and say that country's to blame and then to do nothing. And that's something that would be fatal in the country itself. And so there are 28 member states of the European Union, and to all of my Macedonian friends, what I'm discussing with them and colleagues is how we get enough of those member states on the side of starting these negotiations, and frankly saying that Greece is to blame, Bulgaria is to blame, anybody else for that matter is to blame. That won't take us forward. How we can win more friends and influence them in the European Council, that's what we have to do.
It's not about the blame. We need a consensus in the European Council for this recommendation. And the reality is that the Greeks, don't want to make any step forward in order to allow Macedonia to start negotiation and eventually to resolve the name issue within a framework of the negotiation process.
Look, firstly, a Greek MEP is not going to come on your programme and concede that in public through the Macedonian media, as it would be very helpful if she did. So that doesn't surprise me. When concessions are made between Athens and Skopje, they will have to be made with a spirit of compromise on both sides, and probably through a good deal of private discussion, which is taking place, should be taking place outside of the media glare. That's how we will make things finally work between Athens and Skopje. But there is another message to everyone in the country, which is, do everything that you can. Right, let's get these EU reforms happening. Let's get this working party on between the different parliamentary parties following the Commission of Inquiry fully functioning and making progress. Let's get the norm as warm and reciprocal arrangements as possible between Skopje and Sofia. Let's see some of the efforts to persuade the public in the country that there must be a compromise on the name issue, and then that will help create the environment where we can get success.
Yeah, that's my next question. What to say to the member states who are saying, well, Macedonia don't respect some of the basic political criteria and some of the basic fundamental values of the European Union? Well, and you know that there are such member states.
We're having this interview off the back of a progress report which says that the country does sufficiently meet the political criteria to start accession talks. Is the country ready to join the European Union today? No. But we're not asking for that. I'm not asking for that. The country isn't asking for that. It's asking to start the talks, and that's where I'm absolutely full square on the country's side.
The message is that, and we saw in the progress report, the situation, for example, with the freedom of the media is deteriorating. well, Macedonia looks like not respecting some of the, as I said, basic fundamental values as a freedom of the speech.
As we've discussed before,
which has nothing to do with Greece, by the way.
As we've discussed before, I would agree with that. And I wrote last year that there had been a deterioration in terms of freedom of expression, and I made some positive, constructive points about how that can be addressed. The government say to me, well, some of the issues are about media ownership, and some of those are outside their direct control. That might be right, but the outcome is that there isn't a sufficient plurality in the media of the country. There's not sufficient diverse opinions within the media, and that is a problem, and it's a problem that the government and all of us have to address.
And there is a journalist in the prison too.
I'm deeply concerned about that case. I'm quite happy to say that to you in public. But also, essentially, I've been talking both with the government and the Association of Journalists. I respect the Association of Journalists. I think that they're well motivated and they want to do the best for their profession. Of course, they're driving a hard bargain with the government. They're not going to come back into the round table, act in the dialogue and say everything's all right. They were deeply damaged by what happened on the 24th of December last year. There are elements of the media bill that's in Parliament that they don't agree with, and that's the reason that there have been objections which have prevented the round table from happening. But I will use my visit to the country in 2 weeks' time to talk to both sides again, and I want to use your programme to appeal to both the government and the journalists to overcome those differences. It's not about having a round table. It's not about having a meeting. It's about the conditions in terms of changing issues around free media, freedom of expression that enable the round table to happen again.
Yeah. And, you're a very good friend of Macedonia and very constructive person wanting to help Macedonia, really. I mean, everybody knows in Macedonia that Mr. Howit is a very constructive person who likes Macedonia.
Yes.
Well, how do you feel, Mr. Howit? Maybe you spoke with, I guess you are speaking with the representative of the government very often. How do you feel when they are saying, well, we are going to make progress in the sphere of the freedom of the media, but then you see that the situation is going worse? So I'm interested to know, what are your personal feelings about it?
I understand. You're a good journalist, and that's why you ask a very good question there. But in the same way that I won't sit here and blame Greece or any other country, I'm not going to sit here actually and say something that could be interpreted as blaming the government or blaming an individual within the government, because that won't be constructive. As a friend of the country and wanting to make progress and wanting to be constructive, that's not going to help. So I, of course, meet representatives from the government all the time, and of course I discuss reform issues, free media, but all the other things that need to happen on the economy, on the justice system, in relation to still the treatment of minorities. All of those things, there is a broad dialogue. Sometimes things are said and then in practice they're perhaps not as fully realised as they should be. But that's why we have a European Commission that monitors the country, produces its progress report. It's why I, as a politician, have my job as rapporteur to receive those recommendations and then to organise a vote of the European Parliament in response. We will make our individual judgments. We're not uncritical of the government, but they are our partners, our negotiating partners, and I wish that the negotiations would be full negotiations for EU accession. I don't hide my enthusiasm in saying that.
You raised a concern yesterday in your statement, saying that if the recommendation is rebuffed again, that it could have a serious negative impact for the country. What's your forecast? What kind of impact could have if there is if the European Council don't want to accept the recommendation of the Commission?
Well, the first thing to say is the events of the 24th of December last year were the responsibility of those that were there at the time, not of Europe. But I made the point at the time that the frustration that's built up by lateral progress in Europe must be a contributory factor. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it was a warning sign to the European Union. I hope there won't be any further political deterioration. But what about the economic case? You know, your country, my country, European countries are all suffering still from the economic crisis. We're all looking for ways that we can foster a recovery. We're all deeply concerned about young unemployed people in our communities, lack of jobs, you know, chasing scant foreign investment. You know, I believe that this country's European destiny and vision and future is absolutely essential for investor confidence to bring the money that the country and the economy needs. And there is a direct economic cost if we fail to make progress in terms of the European talks. I believe the government, I believe Mr Gruevski understands that, and that's why together we do have to see actions, commitments, compromises that really enable that future to happen.
Do you have that Gruevski and Samaras both have enough political will to resolve such a difficult question?
Well, again, I said yesterday there has been a failure of political will, and I put that failure within the country, not just the Prime Minister, by the way, but all the stakeholders in the country. But I also put it to the neighbouring countries and to the Member States of the European Union. Each has failed to provide sufficient political will, and I hope me speaking in those terms, as boldly as that, here in Brussels as well as in Skopje, I hope that that message might help revive that political will. I see it as my mission to try to do that.
Do you think that the situation in Macedonia is going to deteriorate if there is no green light from the European Council?
Well,
from the democratic point of view,
right.
First of all.
On the democratic point of view, I've already said it could happen. I don't want it to happen. I think people like me making these statements can sometimes be self-fulfilling, so I don't want to scare people or be sensationalist in any way. But, you know, all I know is that the 17 political parties signed that Memorandum of Understanding after the 1st of March agreement that I was proud to help broker, that said that they would put the country's Euro-Atlantic interests before their own party interests. And I wonder at some actions by some parties or whether they are fully committed to that. And if they're not, it's the country that suffers. It's not their party that suffers, it's the country that suffers. And I expect, and Europe expects, each and every one of the political parties to fulfil their obligations under that agreement in full.
Thank you and congratulations for your optimism.
Thank you.
Това беше Ричард Ховит за Еврозум и благодарам за вниманието. До гледане.